A warning from Barack Obama as we're coming on the air. The former president, who's actually known for his efforts to often avoid commenting constantly and having a daily battle with Donald Trump, is now speaking about what he refers to as the current government's autocratic tactics, the need to defend democracy, and the costs and risks that some elite Democrats may have to be willing to bear. So this is pretty interesting, newsy. These are photos here, brand new from an appearance he just made. And we're going to play you some of that brand new Obama sound shortly. The context, of course, is the escalating power grabs, the abuses, the efforts by President Trump to normalize a different way of patrolling and policing and using force in America, and concurrently trying to grind down dissent. Even as dissent is hitting some of its highest levels in decades. You have to go back to the marches against the Iraq War to find anything like this. 5 million people across our country protesting in unity on one big overwhelming issue. It wasn't just against Trump's tariffs. It wasn't against a specific thing he said or did. It was no kings. It was the idea that unified all these people this weekend that there cannot be king-like powers in this country, not in the name of immigration enforcement, not in the name of some sort of muscular law and order union, that there has to be a line. Against that backdrop, Trump is continuing to press forward this week, activating another 2,000 National Guard troops to L.A. They join the 2,100 servicemen and 700 Marines who are on the ground. And that is notable because this does not appear to be a fact-based or security-oriented decision, because there's mostly calm in the streets. The original incidents that this was supposed to patrol are now over a week and a half ago. The curfew has actually been lifted in the relatively small area, about 4 to 5 blocks around that federal building where the original protests unfolded. The governor, who's closer to these issues than the president, who's busy with foreign policy and 50 different states to think about, the governor says he objects that the troops are now twiddling their thumbs for Trump's political theater. And so Americans seeing this and the crackdown on the undocumented are finding new ways to object, to meet the moment. You may recall the neighborhood that mobilized to protect one restaurant when armed ICE agents descended on that San Diego street. People came in and basically said, we're not just going to be bystanders because we know the people who work there, because we know the business, because this whole thing seems somehow disproportionate. The community got pretty involved. Rachel Maddow reporting on that pushback.
And then, unsurprisingly, the whole neighborhood came out to say, what the heck are you doing? They set off multiple, what appeared to be these flashbang smoke grenades against the random neighbors in San Diego, against the people on the street who were outraged by what they had done.
Some of this is happening organically, just like if you go about living your life and you end up in a scenario where you have to do something or know that the act of not doing something is a choice. If you see an emergency or you're on a subway and there's a fight. But those things are usually pretty episodic. They're incidental, and you don't always really know what's happening when you come across that situation. But there, from what we can tell in San Diego, and certainly in Los Angeles, and in a bunch of other places, people are informed about the wider pattern because people have heard about and seen the level of these crackdowns and that they are targeting people just trying to go get a job or a day job or gig labor in L.A. or people working at a restaurant. In other words, not the gang members that were promised to be spotlighted and prioritized, but a lot of other regular folks who are, in a real sense, part of local communities, even if they are here under a less than legal scenario. Or, as we know from the economy, many of them might have been here legally at one point, a work visa or an asylum seeker, and now they are technically not legally here. They're undocumented. But a lot of folks are stepping up and saying, how do we deal with this knowing that history? And we're seeing civil disobedience as one of these measures. In Phoenix, protesters trying to protect those who followed to show up for immigration court proceedings, where, again, we're not talking about the brazenly lawless. We're talking about folks who are trying to follow the patchwork immigration policies of this country. In New York, Americans have used their bodies to try to stop immigration vehicles and staffers with them who go round folks up in New York. In Chicago, there was a woman sitting down alone in front of a van, basically putting her own body on the line to try to slow down stop or draw attention to what she sees as unjust government action. You can see that effort there. And to be clear, as a legal matter, when you step up and deliberately interfere with law enforcement, that's illegal. And that's true whether or not you agree with the overarching policy of an ICE crackdown. There is not a legal support for blatantly interfering with what police or federal agents are doing under the color of law. And yet there is a longer history of peacefully using that tool, knowing that it might be illegal in the moment, to make a broader point about what our laws should reflect rather than what they may reflect in the moment. And that brings us to what I mentioned, a relatively rare set of remarks from President Obama, who tries to avoid weighing in every day because he knows that then you end up in an Obama-Trump debate every day. He's alluded to as much. And yet he is speaking here not only about the autocratic tactics, which he warned about from Donald Trump, but also what it means for stepping up. And he's calling out some of the kind of soft, rich Democratic elites who haven't always met this moment with courage and who might have sounded louder when the stakes were lower. So I want you to listen to Obama here. He talks about Trump's autocratic crackdowns and how they have endangered even elite institutions or top law firms where people who are there, who might be very rich or millionaires, kind of thought they were untouchable in a very day-to-day sense. And now they have to consider pushback and economic sanctions. Even if they're not dealing with the risk of someone throwing their body in front of an ICE raid, they still have to deal with it. And you can hear within Obama's very careful and respectful tone, which he's known for, his judgment about why it is time to step up.
You could be as progressive and socially conscious as you wanted, and you did not have to pay a price. You could still make a lot of money, have a house in the Hamptons, and still think of yourself as a progressive. And now things are a little different. We now have a situation in which all of us are going to be tested in some way. And we are going to have to then decide what our commitments are. You might lose some of your donors if you're a university. And if you're a law firm, your billings might drop a little bit, which means you cannot remodel that kitchen in your house in the Hamptons this summer.